and I would like to welcome you to this training session. It's the 6th training session in our series about the Regio1st Planning Framework. And as you all probably know, this training session today is about practical feasibility assessment. And you probably also remember last week where we talked about cost-benefit analysis and the very major limitations that cost-benefit analysis has, even in cases when it's done in a very sophisticated way. And we're going to talk about these aspects today, including distributional concerns, including supply chain readiness and other aspects. Here on the right, here, I hope you see the screen. You see the agenda for today. So we basically split the session today in 2 parts. We've got part 1 about insights from the project team, in which I myself will go ahead and tell you a bit more about this stage 7 of our guidance framework. Then George from ICCS will go over to presenting the MCDA, the multi-criteria decision analysis tool, which is one of the key tools that we've developed as part of these more practically oriented stages of the framework. And then we've got part 2. For part 2, we've invited several external speakers. Mathieu from the RAE project will tell us something about the Terry story data visualization tool, which is a very cool and useful tool that. Hi, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Sorry for the delay.
No problem. Okay, now I don't hear myself double anymore. That's good. So we've got that, and then we've got Julia and her colleagues talking about the Prospect Plus project, which is another very useful tool that you might want to have a look at when going into implementation of these different actions. So that's the agenda for today. And as last week, I would kindly invite you to ask questions whenever you consider them. Whenever you have questions, or there's no need to raise your hand, because I'm probably not going to see it, because I'll be too narrowly focused with my mind on the slides. So feel free to just speak up anytime whenever I give you a break to do so. Other than that, we'll just go along the agenda, and then we'll see where it leads us. I hope that we'll have some discussions in the end. And as I said, don't be shy. This is not meant to be like a top-down lecture, but the more we can get you guys involved, the happier we are as well. Right. So that's the overall setting. So I suggest that we get started with stage 6. I think by now there's no need to recap the entire Regio1st framework. We've shown like a dozen times, and I don't want you to get too tired of it. So therefore, let's dive right into stage 6 of the framework, which is about assessing the practical feasibility of least cost energy solutions. There's already a lot going on in the title here, because last week we talked about cost-benefit analysis, and the key thing about CBA, about cost-benefit analysis, is that you need to express everything in monetary terms. You need to express everything in euros, and that's both the charm about this tool, but it's also the major limitation, because as you can imagine, some things are very hard to put a price tag on. And this is where stage 6 comes into play. We want a more differentiated view, a more nuanced view about the different priorities and the different objectives that you might have in your region, and which cannot be easily expressed in euros. So therefore, here we're going to follow along the different steps of the framework and within stage 6, which includes assessing distributional impacts, evaluating the readiness of supply chains, assessing workforce capacity, and then organizing stakeholder consultations to gather feedback and review options. And this latter aspect is going to lead us into the method, or the discipline, if you will, of multi-criteria analysis, which is different from CBA, and we're going to look at that later. So let's go ahead with the distributional aspects. This is what the guidance document says. Planners should evaluate the distributional aspects. The assessment should consider factors such as energy access, affordability, potential job creation, displacement, And of course, identifying these aspects is very important because different measures are going to have different impacts on different demographic groups. But just to get us an overview again of why this is important in the scope of the energy efficiency first principle. You may remember this chart from last week, which shows which is like an illustration of the efficiency first principle. We've got energy system costs right here, including both the direct price costs, but also indirect unpriced costs, such as social environmental impacts of air pollution. And we've got the horizontal axis here with energy consumption. And there, as you can see here along this illustration, there can be a situation with too much energy efficiency, where we save a lot of energy right here, but the costs are also very high. And in reverse, there can be a situation with too much energy infrastructure, where energy consumption is high, but costs are also high. And basically what we're looking for with the energy efficiency first principle is the sweet spot right here, where costs are minimized and energy consumption is not an end in itself, but it's a way to minimize these costs, and in other words, to provide the greatest benefits to society. And you will notice in EU documents and everything that efficiency first tends to have this very explicit societal perspective, which means that policymakers and decision makers should make investment and energy operation decisions in such a way that everyone profits, basically. And in CBA, as we've seen last week, the main indicator for this are like aggregate costs and benefits for the entire society. And this is why primarily in CBA, in the efficiency first context, we adopt a societal perspective and not a private perspective. But why? What's the problem about this? The problem is that we're missing out on distributional impacts if we only focus on the societal perspective. Assessing this distributional impacts is crucial for regional energy planning in the context of EFIRST for three main reasons. First is equity and fairness. So as you can imagine, different socioeconomic groups, they are, or they can be disproportionately affected or differently affected by planning decisions. For instance, if you have a large rollout, or if you're planning a large rollout of heat pumps or of building renovation measures, someone has to finance these measures, and especially, which can be especially or particularly challenging for low-income households. It's also important for reasons of social acceptance. So decisions gain more public support if they're seen as fair and if they consider the circumstances of our community members. And finally, we've got the aspect of legal compliance. Assessing distribution impacts is not just good practice, but it's also explicitly mandated. For example, in Article 3.5 of the EED about the efficiency first principle, which explicitly mentions to take into account impacts on energy poverty, for instance. Now you may wonder what socioeconomic attributes can be relevant. Of course, there's income levels, which is quite obvious. But we also shouldn't forget about these other properties when we do distribution analysis or an assessment of distributional impacts. Age groups can be different. If we mandate the elderly, for example, to renovate their homes, they might be reluctant to do so because they've been living in their homes for several decades. Geographical location can play a role when it comes to different needs or energy access issues compared to urban residents. We've got different household types, for example, single-parent households versus multifamily households. Employment status, of course, plays a role in several of the regions that we have on board in the project. The coal industry plays a big role, and if we just ditch the coal industry without any compensation measures, then there might be trouble. Then we've got different ownerships arrangements. You're all aware of the landlord-tenant dilemma, so that plays a big role. And finally, perhaps educational level, and we could continue this list when it comes to gender, when it comes to nationalities or ethnicity, if you want to call it like that. So there are a lot of aspects that you can potentially take into account when doing distributional analysis. So how to assess distributional impacts? Here we came up with a 6-stage process. It's not set in stone. You can work around it, but this gives us a little bit of structure on how to conduct this. Of course, you need data. There are surveys, there can be interviews, but you need some way of information to assess these impacts. Then stakeholder engagement can be critical. You could hold meetings with community members to gather insights and concerns about planning decisions. Then typically we would look at scenario development, which also relates to what we talked about last week. Different scenarios in order to capture different potential planning outcomes. And we would try to simulate the effects of these different planning decisions on different groups. For example, contrasting a large building renovation program with a situation where there's just more energy supply infrastructure expansion. Then there's this thing called distributional impact analysis. So we would try to quantify these impacts, for example, energy expenditures, access to energy service, and overall economic welfare. And ideally, based on these insights from the analysis, we would do equity-focused policy decisions. So basically develop strategies to mitigate the negative impacts on vulnerable groups. And then, of course, it's always good to have a monitoring and evaluation or a feedback loop in this whole process. So to regularly evaluate the effects that different decisions have on different groups. So what exactly does distributional impact analysis involve, or what indicators, if you will, could be tried to be quantified? Here we came up with like 4 groups. One is economic indicators. So you could, for example, look at the energy expenditure as a percentage of income, in which you will probably already see big differences across different demographics. You could look at the employment impact. Then when it comes to social indicators, energy poverty levels, which by now are quite thoroughly discussed in different reports and very precisely defined. We also want to look at access to different energy services and health impacts. So some people, rather than having to pay excessive energy costs, they will rather turn down the heat in winter times, which of course doesn't come without its hazards or without its health and also mental health impacts. There are behavioral indicators that we can look at, changes in energy usage patterns, adoption rates of different energy solutions. Can people actually afford, for instance, energy efficient LED lighting for their homes? If that is something that is foreseen in our regional energy plan. And finally, policy specific indicators. So there's the slide coming up talking about policy implications that you can derive from this distribution analysis. And here we might want to look at the effectiveness of support measures and the ease of access to different support measures. So let's have a look at that. So what policy decisions could be drawn from this? What is quite obvious is financial incentives. So you might want to provide rebates or discounts on energy efficient products and make them more affordable for specific groups. What is also relevant and which in most cases is with national legislation, which regions don't have immediate impact on, is regulatory adjustments. For example, making standards flexible to take into account, for example, financial capabilities or also the age of homeowners, for instance, when it comes to building codes, or also requiring affordable and energy efficient housing developments. There can be educational and outreach programs. So, for example, energy literacy campaigns addressed to very specific socioeconomic groups, or support services, for example, providing free and subsidized technical assistance and installation support for energy efficiency improvements. Perhaps let's go over to the readiness of supply chains. So here again is a brief outline of the guidance document, and it basically says we should assess the availability and the maturity of supply chains for proposed energy technologies, taking into account the availability of necessary equipment, materials, services, and the degree of technological maturity and market readiness. The idea about the stage or about the step is that ideally you shouldn't make high-level regional planning decisions without taking into account like the actual availability of these technologies, which is quite obvious. Like in smaller, more rural regions, there can be actual constraints when it comes to technologies being available, when it comes to the heat pump shortage that we've seen in some countries lately, because the uptake or the demand has just increased very, very suddenly due to due to various global factors. So let's take a look at that. So why should you care about supply chain readiness? One is, of course, feasibility and success of the regional energy plan. If you ignore this supply chain readiness, there might be delays in the project start or the completion, and therefore missed opportunities for energy savings and financial benefits. It can also result in a loss of stakeholder trust and support. Then another factor is financial efficiency. So if you have a robust supply chain, it helps reduce the cost through economies of scale, through competitive pricing. On the other hand, costs may spiral and making projects financially unviable if you don't take this into account. And finally, there's stimulating local economic growth. So developing a local or regional supply chain for energy efficiency projects supports local businesses, it creates jobs, it boosts the regional economy. On the other hand, it may create, or if you ignore this aspect, it may create a dependence on external suppliers and other countries. It could lead to capital flight, fewer local jobs, slower economic growth. That's the overall setting. So in maybe conceptual terms, what does supply chain readiness involve? You could say that involves speed of deployment, the scale of deployment, and resilience in supply. So how quickly can the supply chain provide the necessary technologies, materials, and also skilled labor to roll out energy efficiency upgrades or solutions? Then, of course, there's the scale, so the capacity of the supply chain to operate at large and to ensure widespread adoption of different solutions, for example, providing materials for building insulation. And then finally, there's resilience. So resilience is about ensuring consistent availability of supply, and even in the face of disruptions like economic volatility, political changes, and natural disasters. Here's an overview of potential indicators that you might want to consider to assess the supply chain readiness in the region. Overall, this is kind of since you are typically policymakers or energy planners, whereas actual investment decisions are made by various different people who don't necessarily reveal all the information where they bought their heat pump or which construction company they got to build their home or to renovate their home. So this is all not easily tangible. But when it comes to speed, there could be like a high-level indicator, the time to implement energy efficiency projects, days or weeks, which you could gather from contractors' reports or project management databases. There's the scale, so number of local suppliers. There's also the volume of energy efficient goods, so which could be the number of items, service hours. And then when it comes to resilience, there could be the number of alternative suppliers for key goods and services. Now you may wonder, okay, why would I need to quantify this? Later, we're going to look at multi-criteria decision analysis, and this is something where you can accommodate these indicators quite easily. If you don't have access to this data, it's perhaps not a big deal. You could also assess this in qualitative terms, or at least on a nominal scale, if it's high, medium, or low, or something like that. As George will show us later, multi-criteria analysis is a very flexible tool that helps accommodate these more difficult to quantify indicators. Strategies to promote supply chains. They can, as I've mentioned, supply chains is not necessarily something that is in your hands as regional planners or as authorities and policymakers, but there are some impulses that you can give to enhance the resilience of the overall supply chains. One is streamlining permitting procedures in order to increase the speed of deployment. You could support rapid prototyping and innovation through various means. When it comes to the scale of deployment, there can be strategic public procurement. Promoting standardization is also very important for manufacturers to provide similar goods, let's say, that are compatible with different standards, such as building codes. And also when it comes to resilience, there could be means available to create resilience audits every few years to regularly conduct these audits to assess current supply chains, identifying vulnerabilities in the supply chains and planning necessary enhancements. There's another agenda item here about workforce capacity, which kind of relates to supply chains, because it's, if you will, a sub aspect of the supply chain overall. So I suggest that I briefly go ahead with this. There are 2 slides, and then perhaps we can go over to questions and discussion about this. Workforce capacity, it's a similar idea as with the supply chains. If the necessary workforce is not there, which especially when we think of again building renovation, which is very labor intensive, which needs a lot of hands-on labor, and if that workforce is unavailable, or if skilled labor is just missing, then we have a problem, because we can come up with the best regional energy plan if there's no one to implement it. Here again, the question is how you can possibly assess workforce capacity within this stage of the framework. And here, I'm not going to go into detail here. There are various indicators that you might want to consider. Educational attainment, for example, the percentage of the workforce with relevant higher or generally education degrees, which you quite often get from national statistics offices. You might also want to look at job vacancy rates, so sort of proportion of unfilled positions in the energy sector, which can signal a shortage in skilled labor. Here again, there's typically quite a lot of information that you can gather from national statistics offices or industry reports, research reports, and so on. So let's quickly have a look at the last stage of the last step of stage 6 of the framework, which is about organizing stakeholder consultations to gather feedback and review options. By now, you've probably seen that the framework has offers various occasions for stakeholder consultations, and everyone probably has their own ways of dealing with stakeholders, but we believe that especially here at this stage, when it comes to actual decision making, based on the very comprehensive data inventory that we have created earlier, and based on the cost-benefit analysis and modeling that we've carried out, it's important to get people's feedback, because it's I personally can say, as researchers, it's very easy to get detached from actual decisions on the ground, and to kind of let's say hide between high-level assessments. But it's important that we get this feedback. So therefore, we have step 6.4, which is about presenting the findings of cost-benefit analysis, gathering feedback, addressing concerns, and building stakeholder support and buy-in. So the question is how we do that. And there's an important turn that we want to consider here in this step. It's a turn from cost-benefit analysis to multi-criteria analysis. It sounds very similar, but they're quite different in terms of methodology, which I'll be showing in the next slide. But as I've mentioned earlier, cost-benefit analysis is inherently about expressing all impacts in monetary values. If you don't have your values in euros, you cannot accommodate it in a cost-benefit analysis. That's both the advantage, but also the disadvantage of CBA. And here's a list of criteria that are very often hard to monetize and therefore hard to integrate in the CBA. Today, we've presented a selection: distributional impact, supply chain readiness, workforce capacity, but you also might want to have a look at system reliability, the scalability, aesthetics. It's something that could potentially we put a price tag on, but typically it requires dedicated research. It's quite difficult, and also flexibility. For example, the ability of the system to adapt to changing conditions, like fluctuating energy prices. You might want to look at regulatory compliance, and you could continue this list probably endlessly. And a very beneficial tool in this context is multi-criteria decision analysis, in which impacts can be either quantitative, qualitative, or mixed. It doesn't matter. However, both MCDA and CBA have limitations. And in fact, CBA can be a very useful input to MCDA. And here's a more detailed slide comparing these two methods. And I can mention this is all very abstract. It sounds very theoretical, but George once I stop talking, he's going to tell us more about the Regio1st MCDA tool that we've developed. But very briefly, I've already mentioned CBA is monetary based, whereas MCDA is quite flexible and integrative. And it's very suitable for complex decisions with very diverse and conflicting criteria, which regional energy planning definitely is an example of. Methodology, all quantitative in CBA, converting all impacts into monetary values, whereas in MCDA, impacts can be quantitative, qualitative, or a mix. And then we typically use scoring, ranking, or a weighting of different criteria without necessarily converting these to monetary values. The cool thing about CBA is that it results in one, or it should be resulting in a handful or one optimal solution based on net monetary gains. So CBA is designed to make kind of rational decisions. It's a tool that comes from economics, obviously. So it's a scientifically substantiated tool, and if you do everything correctly, and if you manage to monetize and to express all impacts that are relevant to you in euros, you have a very nice tool, and you can make very substantiated and well-acknowledged decisions based on that. And on the other hand, MCDA can result in multiple acceptable solutions, also highlighting the trade-offs and synergies between different criteria. Stakeholder engagement is typically limited in CBA, which is a disadvantage, whereas in MCDA, stakeholder engagement is like a key aspect of the overall decision-making process. Transparency is also, if it's properly done, can be very high in CBA, but it may overlook some of these wider benefits that are hard to monetize. Whereas in MCDA, it can enhance decision-making transparency by showing how different criteria are valued and weighted. But one of the problems is implementation. We've seen last week CBA requires very sophisticated modeling, which is difficult, and MCDA requires very careful design to ensure the criteria are relevant, and also that the stakeholders who attend these MCDA participation events are basically representative of the population, which is not a trivial question or not a trivial concern. So the participatory nature of MCDA is both its advantage and its disadvantage, if you will. So suitability for regional planning, I very much believe that we need both. CBA, if we quantify these financial impacts and monetize those impacts that for which reliable data is available, then this is one very important criterion that we can fit into multi-criteria decision analysis. So it's effective for assessing the economic viability of different projects, but typically needs supplementary MCDA for covering all these non-monetary impacts. And therefore, MCDA is very suitable for aligning with the E1st principle by considering a broad range of impacts and stakeholder perspective. But as I've mentioned, it typically requires CBA's one decision criterion for cost effectiveness or for assessing cost effectiveness. So long story short, this is why we've accommodated both in the Regio1st Planning Framework. And before I hand over to George for walking us through the Regio1st MCDA tool, this is what's coming up in stage 7 or in the stage 7 training, which is about defining actions and developing the regional energy plan by prioritizing different interventions, establishing a monitoring and evaluation system, and trying to gather public acceptance and finalizing the regional energy plan. And this is what will be coming up, if I'm not mistaken, next Thursday at the same time.
So regarding the MCDA tool, in this presentation, we will see the part, mostly the part that is relevant to stage 6, which is the practical feasibility assessment, as the MCDA tool will be used both for stage 6 and stage 4. Regarding the contents of this presentation, we're going to give some introductory facts about the objective of the tool, the theoretical background, how we developed the tool, the methodology on which it is based, and the basic features. After that, we will demonstrate lively the Excel-based tool to show how we can use it. And finally, we will give some final remarks. Starting with the introductory part, We will see here that the MCDA tool is a tool that facilitates activities both from stage 6 and stage 4. And in this presentation, we will focus mostly on on the functionalities that are relevant on stage 6. The objective of developing this tool is to enhance the decision-making process, to help the users, the planners of the regional authorities to develop their energy and climate plan. And this is going to be by bringing together a diverse perspective, as Tim said, by incorporating the different stakeholders in some parts of the assessments, and ensuring that decisions are based on a broad set of criteria, not only on economic criteria, but in other criteria from other dimensions, so as to the planners can take decisions in a more integrative way, let's say. The theoretical pillars on which we based the development of the tool are four. The first one is that we need a tool. We need to develop a tool that considers multiple criteria and not only the economic and a short number of criteria. So we have incorporated four dimensions of impacts that criteria can be used. These dimensions are the economy, the environment, the society, and the practical feasibility. Today we will focus mostly on the fourth dimension. The second pillar on which we have developed the tool is the incorporation of the exploitation of the results from the other stages activities. We said that the MCDA tool is the last tool of the planning framework that helps planners to develop their plan. This tool we would like to have the ability to incorporate and exploit all the results and the effort that planners have done in the previous stages. In the third pillar, we need to have a flexible tool to be flexible enough so as to considers both qualitative and quantitative aspects and assessments, as Tim presented in his presentation. And this is the added value of an MCDA method, because exploits the quantitative results of a CBA tool and other assessments that are easily to be found from models or repositories with specific numbers. The MCDA tool incorporates also qualitative assessments, which can be done not only by planners, but also with the help of the stakeholders and the broader society. And the fourth theoretical background, the fourth theoretical pillar is to be flexible and open to assessments that are the product of participatory decision-making methods. And this is connected with what I said before about the stakeholders. The opinions and the views of the society and the stakeholders can be retrieved by many methods, participatory methods, from surveys, questionnaires, and much more, as we said in one of our previous trainings. And this tool needs to be open to results that are retrieved by these methods. Regarding the methodology of the MCDA tool, it is based on 5 steps methodology that helps the algorithm of the tool to give us results. Saying a few things about each one of these steps. The first step is about the selection, the alternatives. Here we select up to 4 alternatives to consider, and when we say alternatives, we mean different scenarios. planners, when they have to develop some strategic scenarios about energy and climate action in their region, may consider different options. So here we have to select these different options, and as we speak about energy efficiency first, here the planners need at least one of their scenarios to be based on this principle. In the second step, the users of the tool select the criteria in the 4 dimensions as presented before, and also indicate the importance of each criterion according to their comprehension and the type of impact for each one of the criteria. In the third step, we have the practical feasibility step. Here we do the assessment of each alternative per criterion regarding this dimension. And here is a step where we will focus today. Step 2, we need to say that in step 2 we have criteria for all dimensions, so we need stage 6 and stage 4 to complete this step of the tool. Instead, in step 4, we have the quantification. We assess each alternative per criterion, if possible, to have quantitative results and assessments. If not, we can use a linguistic scale to give the qualitative assessment. And finally, in the fifth step of the tool, we have the MCDA analysis, where the ranking, the planners give their feedback about the importance of each dimensions, meaning the economy, the environment, the society, and the practical feasibility, so as to fill all the needed, to give all the needed input to the algorithm to do the calculations. And finally, after having filled all this information in the previous steps, the tool gives us the results about the different alternatives. And also we have also some figures to see the performance of each alternative on the different criteria. Regarding the features, as said, it is an Excel-based tool. The idea behind this is the same as in the previous tools that have been developed in the Regio1st framework. We need to have a tool that can be used easily by planners, and also in some cases to be easily users can easily change some of the parameters of the tool. Whereas if we had implemented it in an online version, this probably would be more difficult. It contains 8 tabs, 1 for the cover, the instructions, the 5 for the steps, and 1 for the final results. And the scientific base where we have based this tool is the Topsis method, meaning that by using this multi-criteria method, we compare each alternative or scenario to an ideal solution. We know that there are no ideal solutions, so we consider that there is a solution that scores the highest score to each one of the criteria, and after doing this, each alternative of the planners is compared to this ideal solution. And we have chosen this method because can facilitate a range number of multiple criteria. It is broadly used for complex decision-making problems in the energy sector, and it gives a systematic and quantitative approach to evaluate and rank alternative solutions. Here we have some screenshot from the different tabs of the tool. This is the cover tab, the first tab. Here we see that it's clearly stated that this tool it's about the stage 6 and stage 4 and needs the input from these two stages to give us results. In the second tab, the instructions, the user can have a look on the objective and the description of the tool, the methodology followed, and detailed instructions how to use this tool on each one of these steps. In the first step tab, we will see later in the live demonstration how we use it. We see the table of the different alternatives that the user can fill in. And here in table 1.2, some suggested alternatives, but the users can add more. In the second tab about the evaluation criteria, we choose the criteria per dimension, their importance and their type of impact. It's also here a supportive table with some suggested criteria, but these are not restricted to only these 4. In step 3, we have the practical feasibility assessment. The tool, the user need to assess each alternative, each selected alternative per criterion that is also selected in the previous step. In step 4, we do the same for the other dimensions. This is about stage 7. We don't need to do anything here about the practical feasibility assessment. In step 4, we give the weight about each one of the 4 dimensions: the economy, the environment, society, and the practical feasibility. As you see here, the users give inputs, their inputs only on orange cells. So this is something very common to all of our tools. Orange cells indicate that the users need to give their inputs. And finally, there is the tab with the final results, where we have the performance scores, the ranking, and the figure that shows how each alternative scores. So let's have a quick look on the tabs that are relevant to stage 6 in the practical feasibility assessment. Starting with step 1, the planners have to indicate the alternatives, the scenario I said before. This is something that hopefully will be completed the previous stages of the online planning framework. That's why I referred to that this tool exploit results from the previous stages. So the planners have a range of different alternatives. Here we have a list of indicative alternatives. Let's select one scenario of renovation of residential buildings, one scenario of new natural gas network, and one more scenario of earth heat pumps installation in buildings. That's all we need to do at these steps. We choose the different scenarios. In the second tab, we have to choose the criteria that with which we will assess the 3 different alternatives. We see here that we have a set of criteria per dimension. Here for the economy dimension, the environment dimension, and the society dimension, we don't need to do anything at stage 6. We keep it blank for stage 7, where we need to do so. So here in stage 6, we need to give input about the select criterion only for the practical feasibility assessment. We have here let me zoom in. We have a list of indicative criteria, but the user can add another criterion. Let's say we need criterion X. By clicking on the orange cells, the users can choose their criterion. Let's say we choose the availability of necessary equipment, materials, and services. We choose another one, the workforce capacity. And criterion X that is not included in the initial list, we wrote it in the table so as the drop-down menu can have access on it. So here it is quite flexible for the users to choose their own criteria according to their regional context and the preferences of the planners or the broader society after conducting the 4 steps of the online planning framework as Tim presented before. Now in the second column of the table, we need to indicate the importance of each criterion. Here, this can be done by the planners or in a participatory method along with the stakeholders and society. Let's say we think that the availability of necessary equipment, material, and service is very critical for all parts, so they need to indicate it as very high. Here we have a linguistic scale because most of criteria in this category, in practical feasibility, are qualitative criteria. This cannot be measured in most cases. So even if there is a quantification, the users here need to give an answer on this linguistic scale. The importance of the workforce capacity, let's say, is high. And the importance of criterion X is medium. Now, in this table, we have another column to indicate. This is the type of impact. And we have 2 options, the higher the better and the lower the better. This is because some criteria need to be high to indicate that the higher is the better to have, whereas other is better to be lower than the others. One example of this is the jobs lost, for instance. We need, for job loss, the type of impact is the lower the better, obviously. Here we have the availability of necessary equipment. Obviously, the higher the better. The higher availability, the better for the scenario. This is the same for the workforce capacity. The higher the better. And let's say that the criterion X is the lower the better. That's all you need to do in this second step. Actually, here in stage 6, I said we can fill only this for fourth type of impact, the practical feasibility. And moving on to the third step, we have the assessment. The tool, as you see, has automatically filled the alternatives as selected in step 1. We have chosen 3 alternatives: the renovation of residential buildings, the new natural gas network, and their heat pumps in buildings. And on the vertical axis, we have the 3 criteria selected in step 2. And here the users need to quantify, to assess the score of each alternative per criterion. This is something that can also be done in a collaborative way with the stakeholders and the society to help them quantify qualitative criteria. We have also here a linguistic scale, five scale from very low to very high. And this is something that the users need to think about carefully and give the most representative score for each alternative. Let's say, for example, the renovation for the first alternative, the renovation of residential buildings, the availability of necessary equipment, materials, and services in one region is very high. The workforce capacity, let's say, is medium. And for the criterion X, whatever, let's say it is low. This should be done for each one of the selected alternatives. In the next steps, we have the quantification for the criteria of other three dimensions. This must be done in stage 7. We will see it in the next training, the training of the 7th training. In tab 5, in step 5, the MCDA priority selection, the only thing we have to fill here is the importance of each dimension. This is also to be done in stage 7. Let's have a look. We have also a linguistic scale here. The user indicates the importance from very low to top priority for each dimension. We have also the practical feasibility dimension. We see here that this matrix, this table, is automatically calculated by the inputs in steps 3 and 4. We don't need to do anything here. And we have also a figure with the score of each alternative per criterion. When we fill all the criterion and the assessments and the respective assessments for the criteria, we will see a huge, let's say, diagram, a figure with the score on all criteria per alternative. And finally, we will have the results. Now, the tool give us nothing as a result because there are many gaps in the assessments. That is the main idea about the tool and how we use it. I hope we keep it simple enough for the user to do the assessments. And moving back to my presentation, we have some final remarks. Sorry. We need to say again that this tool doesn't function as a standalone tool only for the practical feasibility assessment stage, because it combines the input from both the stage 6 and stage 7, and results can be returned only stage 7 after giving all this input. This input, as said, is the product of the previous stage and the activities of the planners along with the stakeholders in the society. The selection of criteria must be really careful, and their weights to be considered also carefully. The criteria need to be relevant to the planning and independent. When we say dependent, we mean that we don't have criteria that affected by the same parameters. I don't know, maybe some economic criteria are interdependent between them. We need the criteria that, let's say, when a criterion goes up, doesn't mean that it affects another criteria to goes up also. And the final remark here is that the participatory assessment of the alternatives per qualitative criterion is desirable to ensure broad acceptance. Regarding the next steps, the practical implementation of this tool in the Regio1st Planning region is ahead. We need this practical implementation because we will receive evaluation in real conditions, in real assessment and decision-making conditions. And this feedback from the testing, because we have developed this tool, we have run examples, but we need real exams from our regions, which means challenges, collaboration with stakeholders, with citizens probably. And this feedback will be key for later improvements or adjustments that may be needed to be done in the tool.